podcast. So, Anna, I just want to tell you a few things. This is being, as you see, this is being recorded, and you're welcome to talk to the students of Parikrma Humanity Foundation. And while they're just, I think, joining, I just want to introduce Dr. Anindya Ganguly, our Anna today in the enrichment class. I must share with you all that he is an authority, not only in India, internationally, when it comes to ergonomics or occupational health. And he was in the industry, BHEL. You heard of BHEL because earlier also we had a guest from BHEL. Yeah. So and so he was in the leadership role there for 31 years. Uh, and then of course he's the president of the Indian Society of Ergonomics. He's the chairman of the Ergonomic Standards Subcommittee of the Bureau of Indian Standards. And and he was the first Indian to be the president of the Asian Council of Ergonomics and Design, and the executive committee member of the International Ergonomics Association. So, if I mean, his name is synonymous with ergonomics and occupational health. So today he's going to talk about. Anindya, actually, I had sent you a message. I don't know whether you read it, because you said that 1 hour is not enough for both ergonomics and occupational health. So today you talk of on occupational health, but
Yes.
then we leave it to you, because if you choose, you can make an appearance tomorrow again for ergonomics, or we can, if you are preoccupied, then we can arrange another date for ergonomics.
Yeah,
But
tomorrow is difficult, so probably
okay,
sometime in the future.
okay. So some other time, but today we are going to devote Dr. Anindya Ganguly for occupational health. So, everyone's ready? Yes, we are 38 of us. Yeah, Sada. Sada is there?
Yes, Anas.
Yeah, I think Arindo, you may be wanting to share a
Yes,
presentation.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, certainly.
So, Sada. So you
Yes,
will have to make him the host.
okay.
Yeah. So he'll make you the host, and then you can share,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that is, it has
Yeah.
now been enabled. Fine. Yeah, I can see it
Yeah,
is
yeah,
enabled.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
students, are we all ready to listen to Aninda Anna,
Yes,
Dr.
Kannan.
Aninda?
Anna.
Yes, yeah, Soumya, yeah, Florence,
Anna.
welcome. Yeah, so yeah, I just gave a brief about Dr. Anindya Kumar Ganguly. So I think, and anyway, you all received the mail. So whenever I said that today he's going to talk about to the children here about what is occupational health. Yeah, actually, we have no idea what occupational health is, and some other day he'll talk about ergonomics. So over to you, Dr. Anindya Ganguly. Yes,
Thank you, Bhaskar Anna. So let me
welcome.
just start. Yeah, actually, yeah. So basically, I wanted to divide this talk into two parts. Ergonomics, as he has just explained, is something which is very close to my heart. So I think if I mix both together, it would not be doing justice to either occupational health or ergonomics. So I would be very. I hope I will get an opportunity to talk to you again once more about ergonomics. Today I'll talk about occupational health. Basically, I have been in BHEL for my entire service, like 30 years in BHEL in Tiruchirappalli. BHEL, as you know, you already heard somebody from BHEL before, and already we have two units in Bangalore itself, one near the Tata Institute and one on the Hyderabad Road. So there are two units itself. I was in Tamil Nadu, in Tiruchirappalli. BHEL has this culture of having within health, safety and environment some centers of excellence in different parts of India. So in Tiruchirappalli, we had this center of excellence for occupational health. And I was there in occupational health center of excellence. So we used to help all units all over the country. It's a huge number, about 5 major units, 13 minor units, so many sites, so many offices. We used to take care of the occupational health of all the people, all the BHEL corporates, so to speak. So today I wanted to speak about, this is a more general and a more common area, and probably I'm looking forward to getting another chance to talk to you about ergonomics, which is a more focused area, but also very close to my heart, as I said. So let's start with occupational health. I'll start screen sharing. So, are you all able to see the screen?
Yes.
Great, fine. So, I'll be talking about occupational health, and basically the idea is that after 1 hour, you should have three things. One, what is occupational health? How is it different from normal health? So that is one important learning point which you should have. Second is that what are the factors which make occupational, keep people at work healthy? So that is the second thing which I would like you to know. And third is, why is it important? Why is it so important that BHEL has got a center of excellence for occupational health? And how is it important in today's global scenario? By that time, you are now in school. After some time, you will be joining college, then you will be entering work life, you will be in an occupation. So when you are in an occupation, it's very important that you should have an awareness about your health in that occupation and why. That is the third thing we should know about. So what is occupational health? What are the factors which keep people at work healthy, and why it is so important? These are the three things which you should know at the end of this lecture. Everything else is side information, but just be sure that you are very clear about these three things. So basically, you know about health. Everybody knows about health. Health is something you feel good. It's the absence of sickness. But today we say health is not only just an absence of sickness. It's a feeling of total physical, mental and social well-being. It's a question of well-being. Physically, not only physically, but also mentally and socially. When you have this sense of well-being, then you are healthy. So, as far as once you are in a job, you need to see what are the factors in that job which would make you unhealthy or which will make you healthy. So that is what occupational health is about. And so that people in work are always kept at their 100% physical, mental and social well-being. So that is what occupational health is about. So how is it different from normal health? Just health as we understand it, it is about people at work. What happens when you go to work? We all know what happens when you are at home, when you are mixing with friends. But once you get to work, so many other things come into play, that is the second thing which I want you to know about. What are the different things which happen when you are at work and which can make you unhealthy, and why it's so important to know about it. Basically, let's have some numbers. First of all, approximately around the world, we have about, let me get a pointer. Yeah. So, approximately there are about 374 million injuries and illnesses every year throughout the world. This includes accidents, of course, not only occupational health problems, but also accidents. So safety and occupational health together, there are about 374 million of these things happening every year, and it costs about 299 trillion. So this is the health and well-being of persons at work. That means in an occupation. So that's what we're talking about, occupational health. And it's not just the absence of disease. We want to keep people at 100% of their physical, mental and social well-being. So this 374 million people, incidents, they translate about $3 trillion every year. So that is in in terms of money. But it's not just a question of money. There are about 2.78 million deaths also every year. That 2.78 million translates to about 7,700 every day. And we are talking about deaths. So think of how many people die of corona every day. But this 7,700 people dying of occupational health problems and occupational accidents every single day, day after day, year after year, continuously. And that's why we want to concentrate on, is there something seriously wrong? We want to know what's happened and how you, once you get to an occupation, can be aware of it. What can go wrong and what you can do about it. So being forewarned is forearmed. You are aware, you have this ammunition, how you can protect yourself once you get into an occupation. And not only into an occupation, once you get into a college, you will be in workshop, you may be in a laboratory, all these occupational health problems will be there also. So this is to keep you aware of what are the things which can go wrong and what you can do about it once you get into those situations. So, and the other also the thing is that out of the 7,700 deaths, most of them, large number of them happen in Asia, you see. So in Asia, we are particularly more vulnerable to it, so it's important. So to come back to what can go wrong. So in the working environment, whenever we think of a factory working environment, we think of a highly polluted situation. And what are the things which can go wrong? If you think of a factory, we think of that there's a heat, lot of hot, which is hot, then it's dusty, and then there are a lot of gases, toxic gases involved, and there could be vibration, things are shaking, and of course everything is very noisy. Just these are some of the things. There are so many other things which can happen, and we'll be talking about those things, but these are some of the things which we think of when we think of a factory, when people at work. So these are what we call as occupational health hazards. That means what are the things which are hazardous to your health, which stop you from being healthy while you are at work. So we normally, these are, as I said, occupational health hazards. These health hazards, for our ease of understanding, we divide it into 3 or 4 different types of hazards. The first 2, that is the physical, are called physical hazards and chemical hazards. So these are the typical things which you think about, what I showed in the previous slide: heat, noise, dust, gases. All these things are physical and chemical hazards. Why we call them physical and chemical, you need not know at this stage, but these are basically physical and chemical hazards, and we'll be discussing them very quickly in the next 10 to 15 minutes. But the other 2, which we are not, normally we don't not talk about them, are also important. That is biological hazards. That's becoming more and more important today, and it's very important that you should know about what are the kind of biological hazards which can happen while you are at work, in a laboratory, in a workshop, in an environment where people are mixing. That's important to know. And the other area is those things which are related to the work itself. Those of you who are studying physics will know that the unit of work is erg. So those things which are related to the work, so somehow it is connected to work, erg, from the Greek word is the same for work. So those hazards which are coming from the work itself, and that is ergonomics. So what are the occupational hazards which are coming because of the work itself? Today I'll give you just a very brief introduction to them, maybe 2 minutes, but it's something totally different. So I would like to have a full 1 hour separately to talk about them. So these are the different types of hazards which can be there. Physical hazard, chemical hazards, which we know about somewhat, but I want to go into a little bit of detail about it so that you are very clear about what can happen, what can't happen, what's bad, what's not so bad. And biological hazards, which is something which we have not considered before, and of course ergonomical hazards, which we'll talk about later. So within physical hazards, we have the typical ones are, of course, heat. We know that heat, if you're in a factory, things are very hot. You can see over here, there's an iron plant. So the molten iron is being poured in, and it's a huge amount of heat. Anybody who's standing anywhere near that is exposed to huge amount of heat. So obviously we expect that in a factory, there'll be a lot of heat. Fine. Then opposite can also be there. People can be working in a cold storage. So the opposite of it can be there, that people can be working in extreme cold. So it's not just you're exposed to cold because you're outside, you're in a cold environment, but here you're expected to be in that cold environment throughout the day, throughout the time you're working. Then, so heat is there, cold is there. Then things are like vibration or noise is there. Yes, that is the next thing which we think about in a factory. What can you, whenever people are working in a factory, you can hear huge amount of noise may be there, or it can be moving part, for example, aeroplane engine or any kind of moving machinery will be causing huge amount of noise, or saw, anything which is moving that can be causing huge amount of noise. One small point I like to add here is that when we are talking about heat and cold, you all know how we measure heat and cold. You see the temperature reports in the newspaper or TV every day. We talk about it in terms of the heat in terms of temperature, degrees centigrade. How do we measure noise? Just for your information, we measure for noise, we have a different unit. We measure noise in a unit called decibel, dB for short. So decibel is a unit by which we measure noise, and in our country and many other countries also, we have a limit that in any situation 90 decibels cannot be exceeded. Any noise more than 90 decibels is not permitted in a factory for an 8-hour exposure, because the shift is basically of 8 hours. Beyond that, it has to be much less. So 90 decibels is only in your factory. It can't be there in your where you are living or in front of a school or a hospital or at night. That's not 90 dB. That's much less. But in a factory, it can't be more than 90 dB. That's just a limit. But the important point for you to know is that for noise, we use the unit for measurement of noise is decibel. Then along with that we have vibration, which is very similar to noise. Wherever you have noise, there could be vibration, typically when there is a moving part, and you can expect vibration. For example, when people are digging the road with a pneumatic drill, there will be a huge amount of noise, and there will be the vibration will be there. It will be vibrating terribly, and the person who is operating it, all the vibration will be passing into his hand, through his hand, arms, and shoulder, body, everything will be vibrating. So that's another physical hazard. So then another thing is illumination. Different types of light can create a problem. How can that be? You can understand heat and cold being a hazard. You can understand noise being a hazard, even vibration. But how is light a hazard? Light can be a hazard according to what kind of, how it is interacting with you. For example, in this situation, you can see that the reflection on the screen is such that people are not able to work properly. And when they try to strain continuously to see what's happening, because based on what is happening on the screen, they have to work based on that. So if they keep on trying to see that, they get eye strain, and that becomes a problem. The opposite situation is something which you may have also experienced is glare that happens at night. So when this is there, when vehicles are coming from opposite side and there's a very bright light, it becomes difficult to see what is right in front of you. Now, how is that an occupational problem? It's an occupational problem for those for whom driving itself is an occupation. So, for example, a bus driver or a cab driver, for those people, it becomes an occupational health hazard, because continuously, because of this bright lights in the visual field, they find it difficult to see what they actually have to see, that is this dark road in front of them. So illumination can also be a hazard. So we have heat, cold, noise, vibration, illumination, and one more very important physical hazard is radiation. Radiation, we have two types of radiation. One is the type of radiation when we think of atomic radiation, what we call as ionizing radiation. Why is it called ionizing radiation? Because it has the power to split an atom into positive and negative ions. So it is very powerful radiation, and it can cause a lot of damage to the body. So that is one type of radiation. The other type of radiation is non-ionizing. We'll be talking about that. I'll just give you an example of that because that's much more common. For example, if you see somebody welding, you see this light, very bright light is there. This causes huge amount of ultraviolet radiation. And that is a very big problem for people who are doing this work continuously. We'll come to that later. So this is one type of illumination problem, a radiation problem. It could be other types of problem. For example, there are situations where these furnaces, if you're working in front of a furnace, the furnace is not only hot, it gives you a particular type of radiation. Infrared radiation comes from the furnace. So not only heat, but this infrared radiation also comes from the furnace that causes different types of health hazard. So radiation is a hazard, illumination is a hazard, noise is a hazard, heat is a hazard, cold is a hazard. These are all different types of physical hazards. Then we have chemical hazards. So chemical hazards, I told you don't bother about why we call some of them physical and some of them chemical. There's a reason for it. You don't have to bother about that. But just try to understand what are these hazards. So in chemical hazards, we have different types of gases which are there. Then we have vapors. Then we have dusts and fibers. Then we have the fumes, mists, smoke. All these things are there. But anybody would say, even I would have thought when I first saw this, that most of these are basically different, very similar type of words. Gas, vapor, fume, mist, smoke. This seems to be different play of words in English. Basically all the same thing, isn't it? It's actually not the same thing. All of them are slightly different, and based on that, the way they are harmful to your body changes. How are they different? First of all, basically a gas, what we call a gas, is something which is in gaseous form, like a gas at normal temperature. So for example, let's take water. Water, when it's at normal temperature, it's in liquid form. But if we heat it, it will become gaseous. Then we won't call it gas, we will call it a vapor. Same thing can happen to solid items. Something which is solid, if you heat it, it will first start melting. Then if you start heating it more, part of it will vaporize into a gas. But we don't call that gas. For example, we don't call it iron gas. If you have iron, it's a solid block of iron. Then if you heat it, it becomes molten. That picture I showed you from heat, molten iron being poured. But along with that, part of it was coming out as a fume, as a gas. So it depends on what things are when in the normal room temperature. So a gas is something which is gaseous at room temperature. Vapor is something which is liquid at room temperature, usually solvents. We'll come to that. Fumes are some those things which are solid at room temperature, but if you keep on heating it, first it becomes liquid, then some little bit of gases comes out of it. They are fumes. Then dusts and fibers are something which are bigger in size, but they become smaller and smaller. Then they go into the air in form of dust or in terms of fibers. Then you have aerosols, mists, which are something like your deo sprays, something which is in a gas and gets sprayed out. And also we have smoke. When smoke is something, when you burn something which is very rich in carbon, like paper, wood, cloth, something like that, or even oil, something which has a lot of carbon in it. When you burn it, then we call that a smoke. But basically, you think that they all do the same thing, something which we are able to inhale. But according to where it came from, we would call it, what it was at room temperature, we would call it gas or vapor or fume, or it would be a mist, it would be something which is in something, sprayed out something, and smoke when it has carbon. For example, think of spray painting. When you spray paint something, this is a mist or aerosol. So the paint particles are sprayed out in something which is a solvent. When you use a deo, the perfume particles are sprayed out in a gas or some other liquid. So that's why fog advertises no gas. So they don't use gas as the thing in which the perfume particles are. That means Some other DOs use gas to propel the perfume particles. So this is case of spray painting. So let's stick to occupation. In an occupation, you have people who are doing spray painting. Their job is to do spray painting throughout the day. So when they do the spray painting, what happens? This vapor, this solvent, this as well as the paint particles go into their nose. And once it goes in, the paint, it's like swallowing paint. So instead of swallowing it, they're actually inhaling the paint. And they're inhaling the solvent in which the paint was dissolved, sprayed out. So that causes other types of problems. And this, as you can see, is coal dust. So dust also, it was bigger particles, then they were crushed for use. So as the size got reduced, smaller and smaller, part of the very small particles, they came out in terms of, they got floated in the air as smoke. So as dust. When they're burnt, they become smoke. So then we have gases, vapor, dust, fumes. I told you fumes were originally solids. When they got heated, they melted, then they became gas, and then they went up into the air. This happens in welding. When you see people welding, you see this smoke from welding, what we call as welding smoke, or welding fume is the correct word. But what is it actually? These are all very, very small particles of this metal which is being welded. Because of the very high heat from the arc of the welding, this metal first melts, then vaporizes, and because it's so hot, hot air rises. So it rises with the hot air. And once it comes in contact with cold air nearby, again it goes back into the metal form. So these are actually very, very small metal particles suspended in the air all around this welder. And why is it looking white like smoke? It's looking white because of the intense light over here. This light is shining on these particles and making it look white like smoke. If you burn something, you will see white smoke. But this is not smoke at all, dear students. All of these things, these are actually very, very small metal particles. And what metal? Depends on what is this metal he is welding. If he is welding iron, this will be full of iron. If he is welding aluminium, this will be full of aluminium. If he is welding something very toxic like chromium, this will be full of chromium. So this is metal fume. So these are metallic oxides. So from the metal, they combine with oxygen in very small particles and go into the air, and so it makes it very easy for the person who is working there to breathe in this metal. It's something like breathing in this metal bar. Can you imagine? You have a bar of metal and you're breathing it in. But that's what's happening. Because the metal goes into very small particles like a gas, and he can breathe it in. Then we have this atom that we have shown, and then previously in the case of the spray painting, and of course whenever there is a carbon rich matter is being burned, this is really smoke. This looks like smoke, but it isn't smoke. But this is actually smoke, and this is full of carbon which you can be going in. But problem is with over here in smoke, the carbon itself doesn't cause that much of a problem. Some amount of problem, but that's not much. What happens is that when you are inhaling smoke, you inhale a lot of gases along with that smoke. That causes bigger problem than the smoke, the carbon in the smoke itself. So these are all the different types of chemical hazard. I just want to give you a little bit more information about two of them, which are particularly dangerous, and we need to know a little bit more about them just for the sake of your awareness. First of all is gases. Now, when I say gases, you can think that yes, you said that something what is there in the gaseous form at room temperature, like oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon dioxide, all these things are gases. But all of them are not hazards. Some of them are hazards. Which are the hazards? It depends on how they are hazardous to our body. Basically, gases are hazardous to our body in three ways. Either they can stop us from breathing, taking in oxygen and taking the oxygen to our body cells where it's needed for work, or it can cause problems in our lungs and nose and throat, cause instant irritation so that we are not able to breathe. Ultimately, the same thing happens. We are not able to breathe, we are not able to take oxygen where it's required. But it can happen in 3 different ways. And according to that, the different ways in which the gas acts, it may be more dangerous or less dangerous, or we are less able to detect it or not. First is the simple asphyxiation. Asphyxiation means something which stops you from breathing. Don't get bothered about this long word. It's a gas which stops you from breathing. How it stops you from breathing? By removing the oxygen from air. Because ultimately it is the oxygen which we need from the air. Air is full of oxygen and nitrogen. 20% oxygen, 80% nitrogen. Now if something else goes in, for example, hydrogen adds or nitrogen increases in percentage. So instead of 20% oxygen, you have 15% oxygen, 10% oxygen, even 5% oxygen. Then what happens? Then you can't breathe because you need around 20% oxygen to breathe. Actually, you need a certain pressure, but let's say 20% oxygen you require to breathe. If that's not there, then whatever is the gas which came in and moved the oxygen out, that's an simple asphyxiant gas because it simply came in and got the oxygen out. But some of the gases are much worse than that. It does the same thing but in a much more dangerous way. How? It stops the blood from taking the oxygen out from the air or from carrying it to the cells where it's required. So that becomes a chemical asphyxiant. So it's not that oxygen is not there, but these gases, they poison the blood and the cells. For example, carbon monoxide. Carbon dioxide is what we normally breathe out. But when there's only one oxygen with the carbon, we call it carbon monoxide, and it's an extremely dangerous gas because it's a chemical asphyxiant. It stops the blood from taking the oxygen out of the air. And HCN is cyanide. Everybody knows that cyanide is a poison. But how does it poison? What it does, it stops the cells from using the oxygen. So there may be a lot of oxygen in the air. You may be able to blood may be taking the oxygen to the cells, but the cyanide has stopped the cells from using that oxygen. Result is the same. No oxygen, no breathing, and finished. So they are asphyxiant gases. There is a third type of gas which doesn't actually prevent the oxygen, has got nothing to do with the oxygen, but they terribly irritate the cells of your nose, throat, lungs. They are irritant gases, and typical irritant gases are chlorine and ammonia. So what happens if you breathe in an irritant gas, then your throat and nose starts burning. Now, you will never find anybody dying from a chlorine or gas leak in a factory unless they are trapped, because it's so irritating. Everybody knows that there is a chlorine or gas ammonia leak and they'll run away. Only if you are trapped over there, then only you can die of chlorine or ammonia leak in a factory. But these are much worse. It sounds not that bad, but these are very bad because they are not irritating you. You don't know that they are in such a high level that it is stopping you, it's killing you, but you don't know. For example, you see this picture. Does it have a lot of chemical gases, toxic gases there or not? Who knows? You can't see from this picture. That's why you need to have this detector. This detector tells you that whether anything from this joint, any gas is leaking or not. So if you know that in a particular situation, this pipe is carrying maybe carbon dioxide, or it's carrying HCN or even chlorine or ammonia. Well, ammonia you may be able to detect, but for example, carbon monoxide is the most commonly used gas in so many factories, and it has a tendency to leak out from these joints. Once the joints are old, they start leaking out, and you don't know that this thing is full of carbon monoxide, and anything can happen to you. So you need detectors. In a non-occupational setting, 2 places where people can die of carbon monoxide is when a car is running in a closed garage. So when a car engine runs, it emits a lot of carbon monoxide. and if that exhaust gas gets trapped inside the garage, you're sitting in a car with the garage doors closed and the engine is running, you will have a very high dose of carbon monoxide and person can die. Another way it happens, as I told you in the previous slide, that when the smoke, when carbonaceous matter is burning, there's smoke. But more than the smoke, what is dangerous is the gas. So, in many poor people, what they do, when they are cold, they keep a coal fire burning just to keep warm in winter. So, what happens is the coal fire, carbon is getting burnt and it is getting carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide as some of the products. So, it's cold, so naturally you closed all the doors and windows and you've lit a fire and it's very comfortable. They fall asleep and they don't know, because carbon monoxide is not an irritant gas. It will, everybody in that room can die just because the room is totally closed and the carbon monoxide level rises and it binds with your blood and stops people from breathing. So it sort of strangulates you. Asphyxiation is like something like strangulating you, and it can happen either in a car, sitting in a car with the garage door closed, or it can happen when you light a coal fire and close all the doors and windows just to keep warm. So very dangerous. Because it doesn't let you. It's a silent killer. It doesn't let you know. So in a factory, you need to wear these detectors. So that will start giving an alarm, beep, beep, beep. Alarm will be there. You know that there is a carbon dioxide leak or monoxide leak or not. Whereas irritant gases is not that bad. That's one. Gases is three ways in which it can work. And particularly you need to remember, of course occupationally, but also non-occupationally, that there are some gases, particularly carbon monoxide, which is a silent killer, and it can, the way in which it can kill you silently without even knowing. The second thing which I want to tell you about, also common general knowledge, is about dust and fibers. Everybody knows that dust is bad, but what I want to tell you is that all dust is not equally bad. Sounds strange? So how is it possible that all dust is not equally bad? It depends on what happens to the dust. You breathe in the dust. What happens to the dust? Now, first of all, some of the dust gets stopped in your nose and throat. Some of the dust can go straight into your lungs, and that's where it creates the problems. So, if it goes into the area of your lungs where you do actual work of breathing, respiration, then that dust is called respirable dust. So, if you see in the TV, what is the dust level in Bangalore, what is the dust level in Delhi, what is the dust level in Mumbai or Nagpur, there, when they tell you the dust level, so many parts per million or milligram per million, they will always use this abbreviation RSPM, respirable suspended particulate matter. Suspended particulate matter is dust. It's just another way of saying dust. But the important key word is R, is respirable. Because I said all dust is not equally harmful. It is this dust, RSPM, which goes deep into your lungs, right deep inside where the actual air, the oxygen and air goes in and out from your blood. That can go right deep down. For example, about 10 to 2 microns are separated in the nose and throat itself. Our body has got a very good defense mechanism, and all these bigger particles will stop here. Slightly smaller, between less than 2, they can go down, but even here there is no breathing. It's just a pipe. It's like a water pipe or air pipe. It just goes down. It's a windpipe. Even up to here, nothing happens. If it comes down here, body has got mechanisms to get rid of it. But the things which are smaller, less than 0.5 microns, or say even people say about very smaller things, they go straight down and they go into this respirable part, and over here they cause the maximum amount of damage. So those things only which are respirable, they are the bad dust. I'm not saying more than that is good dust, but it's not that bad. So if you have different types of dust, for example, you have some natural dust like atmospheric dust or pollen dust, or in even tobacco smoke Or we can have welding fume, we can have coal dust, we can have cement dust, which is occupational. So if you look at this blue zone over here, this is respirable, and this is even smaller than respirable. So anything which is more than this is not really harmful. For example, pollen. Unless you are allergic to pollen, nothing will happen by smelling pollen. It will get stopped over here in the nose and throat, and the body will take care of it. Suppose you enter a cement factory, and you enter like you are, when you come out, you are fully white, full of cement dust. But all of it is not respirable. You see, cement dust, half of it is not respirable, only half of it is partially respirable, not even entire range. So most of the cement dust will stay over here, a little bit of it only will go in. Whereas tobacco smoke almost entirely goes right in, very deep into your lungs. That's why smoking is so dangerous. Remember that when you are get feeling like having a cigarette, remember that tobacco smoke goes right deep into your lungs and causes much more damage than coal dust or cement dust or pollen dust. Welding fume, for example, is a wide range. Part of it is non-respirable, part of it is respirable, and some of it is very small. So we need to know how bad it is. So whenever we measure it, we need to know, like atmospheric dust. That's what I said when TV reports atmospheric dust in Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai. They always say, what is the RSPM part? That is this part, the bad part. This part we are not concerned with. So sometimes your place looks very dusty, but most of it may be big particles. Or it may not look much very dusty, but all of it can be respirable. That could be very, very bad. So that's about dust and gases. Two things which you need to remember, apart from occupational, which affects you even in your daily life. Then we have biological hazards, which I said are not very commonly understood as hazard. Typically, they are organisms or substances derived from an organism which can pose a threat to your health. Typically, we have bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, these things. Now, what do they look like? They look like this: bacteria, viruses, fungi. Now, because of coronavirus, everybody knows that this is a picture of a virus. It all have the spikes which are sticking out, which helps them to stick into your body and deliver their DNA material and cause you to fall sick. So these are viruses, these are bacteria, these are funguses. In fact, this is a picture of black fungus, which happens in many COVID patients and can cause blindness or even death. So that's also a very dangerous thing, funguses. And these are parasites. This is a flea, but even malaria is caused by a parasite. So all these things are different things which can cause damage to human health. But occupationally, how can it happen occupationally? For first situation where it can happen occupationally is when people are taking blood samples or giving injections. The health workers who are doing this, they can have an needle prick injury, and that can cause the sample from the patient to enter their blood. Or because of the contamination, they can get the sample, or from the medicine can enter their blood. So that's a problem. Even worse is people who are actually working with this biological sample. They can breathe it in, it can enter through their skin, it can splash on their eyes, anything can happen, but mostly they can breathe it in. So that's a possibility. Then, for example, if this is a wall of a factory which is full of fungus, so anybody who is working over here will be continuously breathing in this black fungus. So that's an occupational thing. But most interestingly, I just want to spend 1 minute on this last example of an occupational biological hazard which happens in an office which looks excellent. There's no chance of a hazard over here, but it is very hazardous. Why is it hazardous? Because of this central air conditioning. When you have a central air conditioning, the air gets recirculated. So if from far away somebody has got a particular type of disease, that goes into the central air conditioning and gets widely distributed throughout the factory, throughout this office or factory. So in this situation, it can be a biological hazard. Nowadays, right now, we think of traveling in the problems of traveling in an air-conditioned bus or in aircraft because of COVID, because the coronavirus can also get equally distributed. Or in a restaurant, an air-conditioned restaurant, somebody is sitting at one corner of the restaurant, but the coronavirus particles which he is breathing out, it enters into the air conditioning and gets spread throughout the room. So this particular situation can happen in an office or in a factory, and there's a word for it. They call it sick building syndrome. They think that the building is sick. If you go and work there, you fall sick. But it's not because of the building, it's because of the air conditioning system. And another problem with the air conditioning system is that many air conditioning systems use water to cool the air. So you can see that there will be cooling towers. So what happens? That water in the cooling tower is the ideal situation for breeding the bacteria and viruses. Very humid temperature, something like our body temperature. So the viruses not only get spread, the air conditioning system helps to multiply the viruses and then spread equally throughout the factory or the office. So these are the situations in which occupational health can get affected when you are in a job which is likely to create this problem. What can happen? So basically, there are 4 levels. First type of these viruses and bacteria are the things which happen day to day, because we can get something like a cold, we can get a stomach problem, all these things can happen to us. That is level 1. So that happens to us also. If you don't practice good hygiene in our day-to-day life, that will happen. If you don't wash your hands before eating, some of the things can enter through your hand, through the food which you eat. And today in corona situation, if you don't wear a mask, if you don't practice distancing, you don't wash your hand, then these things can enter. So that is level 1. Level 1 are common things, not coronavirus, but things like flu or your stomach upsets, which are okay, it happens. That's not very serious, and it can get over. You can take some medicines and will become over. Level 2 are serious diseases. You don't die from them, but it can be very serious, like hepatitis, jaundice, malaria, things like that, for which you need to take medicine. But while you have that disease, you can't do any work, you can't go to school, you can't go to college, you have to stay at bed, may even be admitted to a hospital. But you don't die from it, but they're pretty serious. Level 3 are things which can lead to death if you are not very careful, like coronavirus. But coronavirus is actually level 4. Why? I'll tell you. Level 3 is things which can kill you, but for which medicines are there. It can only kill you if they are not diagnosed properly and you are not admitted to hospital. If you don't take care, then it can kill you. For example, some type of malaria. Normal malaria, I said, was level 2, but there are some types of malaria which can kill you. There are some types of hepatitis, what is like jaundice, but it's much more serious, it can kill you. There are some diseases which can kill, like typhoid, for example. It can kill you. But medicines are there, and if you're properly diagnosed, properly taken care of in a hospital, then you won't die. Level 4 is the worst. There it can kill you, and we don't have a medicine for it, like coronavirus. There is no way in which there is no medicine for a coronavirus. There is no medicine for AIDS. There is no medicine for Ebola virus. These things are level 4, and you need to take very high level of precaution. Those people who are handling this type of level 4 biohazards occupationally, they need to take very stringent precautions. They are called level 4 biohazard precautions, as something like the way in which they will be dressed, the environment in which they will be working. There are a lot of things. So this is a level 4. So we expect that, for example, the lab at Wuhan, China, which was dealing with coronavirus, where some people say that the coronavirus initially escaped. So those people who are working in Wuhan, in the coronavirus lab, they should have been wearing things like this. So that is level 4 biological hazard. And this can happen occupationally. As I told you, people who are taking blood samples, who are working with biological samples, with bacteria, viruses, research workers. If you go into biological research, if you become a doctor or a nurse, you will be exposed to this kind of biological occupational hazards. Or people who are, for example, in the food industry, where they're handling all sorts of food, whether for which the biological hazard can come in, or the last example which I gave in that office, where just because of the central AC, the particular bacteria or virus can come in and cause a problem. But because it happened during work, that's also an occupational hazard. So then we have ergonomical hazards. So these are what happens either because of the worker or because of the workplace, because of the problems of body size, posture, for example, applying forces, then the posture in which people are working, or because of the workplace or the equipment which people are working, that is the control, for example, in a control room, or when you're using computers, your neck pain, back pain, eye strain, all these things. It's very exciting. I would talk to you about the entire range of these ergonomical hazards on another day, particularly about this last word. I don't have a picture for this, but this is about usability. When you use something, when you use a pen, when you use a mobile phone, how usable is it? That is what ergonomics is all about, and it's very interesting and very close to my heart, so I'll talk about it in a different day. Today we'll sum up, because basically the problem is that all these occupational hazards lead to occupational diseases. That's the problem. That was the second thing which I told you should know. So what's wrong with this? Because of this, each of these hazards has a target in your body. Noise will target your ears, dust will target your lungs, radiation can target your eyes, skin and other parts of your body. Gases will target your lungs, your blood. Solvents, that the vapors, can target your liver. Fume can target your lungs and even your nerves. Viruses will obviously target your lungs, liver, your immunity. This is just a very small list. Each of these occupational hazards has got a target in your body, and once they attack that target in your body, you get what are called as occupational diseases. So an occupational disease is something which only happens in the particular occupation. So if you do this occupation, you get that occupational disease. There's a one-to-one relationship. It's not that we didn't know about it. We've been knowing about occupational diseases since 1700. That's how many? 300, so many hundreds of years we've been knowing about it. And this gentleman called Bernardino Ramazzini, he wrote a book. He called them diseases of tradesmen. He didn't call them occupational diseases, but he added this question. He said that doctors, when a patient comes to a doctor, the doctor has got a standard list of, he has got a questionnaire. He said, how old are you? What's your weight? When did this happen? Have you had this before? Like that, he has got a standard list of questions when he takes your history. This Bernardino Ramazzini said, he was a doctor, he said that you should add one more question at the end, what is your occupation? Because otherwise the doctor may be missing that all the symptoms which the man is getting can come because of that occupational hazard which he is exposed to. For example, he is a welder and he gets fume and that affects his nerves. So you may be thinking that he has all sorts of nervous diseases, but actually it may be because he is exposed to a particular metal fume because he is a welder, or a particular gas may be causing that particular problem. So if you ask this question, and this was known since 1700, that certain things in your occupation can give rise to certain symptoms which the doctor should be aware of it. Otherwise, he'll be making a wrong diagnosis. So examples are, coal miners have got something called pneumoconiosis. You don't remember the names. Just the point is that some occupations have some diseases. Unless you are a coal miner, you don't get this disease. Unless you are working in a cotton mill, you don't get this disease called bisonosis. Unless you are working in asbestos products, you are manufacturing asbestos products, you don't get asbestosis. You don't get asbestosis by sleeping under an asbestos roof. That doesn't happen. You don't get asbestosis by using asbestos product. You can get asbestos when you are manufacturing asbestos products or when the asbestos item is broken down, because then the fibers will go into the air. That's what is dangerous. And then from the welding, we can get archive. I showed you that picture of the ultraviolet coming from radiation. The two people are welding, huge amount of ultraviolet coming. that ultraviolet can act on your eyes and it can start burning. This can happen to you also. You don't have to be a welder. If on the road somebody is welding on the roadside or in a shop and you stand to look at it for some time, later on, about 2 hours, 3 hours later, or even in the evening, your eyes will start burning. That's because the ultraviolet from the welding has gone into your eyes, and after some time, the problem has started. Another typical example where you can get a disease which is otherwise an occupational disease is when you play tennis. That's tennis elbow. Tennis elbow everybody has heard of, so it's supposed to happen with people who are playing tennis. But it happens because they are doing this action of hitting the ball hard, and that happens in many occupations. For example, in an assembly line. So people in an assembly line can get tennis elbow. So this is a typical thing when you are doing that particular type of work, that particular body part is affected, the target is there and you can get it. So point is that they are reportable and compensable. That means our factories, that the government of India takes it very seriously. Why does it take it very seriously? One of the reasons why it takes it very seriously, I told you that this archive happens later. You look at the welding on the street, nothing happens. You keep on looking at it, very nice, looks nice. But it will happen to you maybe 3 hours later or in the evening. So that is one of the reasons why we should worry about an occupational disease. The first reason problem with occupational disease is that it takes a very long time to appear. Sometimes years. In case of welding, it may be hours, but in case of asbestosis and other diseases, it takes years to happen. And by the time they appear, it's usually too late to do anything about it. So we need to have only prevention. And how can we prevent it? For prevention, we need to do recognition, evaluation, and control. So that is what the whole point of this lecture is, that you should be able to know what are the occupational hazards, and if you know what are the occupational hazards, you should be able to have an idea that these are the things which are going to create problems. Now, the one thing with children is that you can't have any industry which doesn't have an occupational hazard. All industries will have occupational hazard. But it's important to know what is that particular hazard, evaluate it. There's a limit for it. Like for noise, I said 90 decibel. So there will be noise in industry, but as long as it's within 90 decibels, then it's okay. As far as we know today, like for carbon monoxide, so dangerous gas, but there's a limit. Certain level is okay. So the detector will only sound if it is beyond that level. So it's for all those things, for noise, for carbon monoxide, for vibration, for heat, everything, there is a limit, level to which it can be allowed. So once you evaluate it and see that it is okay or not okay, and if it is not okay, we need to control it. We need to see that it's within the level, bring it down to within that level and maintain it within that level. So the three things which I wanted you to know: what is an occupational hazard? It does health. Occupational health is your physical, mental and social well-being when people are at work. Second is that what are the things which can cause problems to occupational health? That is your occupational health hazard, is physical, chemical and biological, of course ergonomical hazards also, particularly these gases and dusts which also have a non-occupational aspect which you should know about. That gases can be either irritant or it can just kill you, silent killers without knowing that something is happening. And dust is that all dust is not equally bad. Those things which can go deep into your lung are particularly bad. So that is the second part of it, that what's bad about this occupation, how your occupational health can get affected, that is by diseases, and what you can do about it, that is the prevention of occupational disease, can help you to promote your health. Now, today we are not talking about prevention of diseases. Basically, we are not, once you have a disease, we are not talking about curing it. Rather, we are talking about prevention, being proactive. So once you know that what are the hazards, how it can affect you, then you measure it, and then based on that you can keep it in control, and that's how we can be proactive and prevent occupational diseases and have a very good level of occupational health. So that's where we are. If you have, I hope.
Yeah, Anindo.
Yeah.
No, brilliant presentation. Brilliant, really. I mean, it's. I also learned a lot from you today. I'm sure the students also has learned a lot.
Yeah,
And
there are
so
some
we
questions,
open
I
up.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, we open up the questions. In between, Kalpana is also with us. Kalpana was the head of all the schools. She's in the leadership,
Right.
and
I'm a learner now.
yeah,
We're all learners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you,
yeah,
Dr.
yeah.
Ganguly. I joined a little late because I was in another meeting.
No
But
problem.
it
Yeah.
was very fascinating to hear you speak, right?
Mm,
A lot of my
mm.
chemistry, biology classes came into, my school
Yeah.
days. I just went. I
Yeah,
didn't pay
yeah.
attention then, but I paid a lot of attention now.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
See, quite a few of our parents are working, with the BWSSB and they're Parikrmikas, okay, work
Yeah.
sanitation workers. So many a time we hear about them going down into manholes,
Yeah.
right? And then a
Yeah.
few of them don't come out alive. What happens? What is this thing over there, Dr. Ganguly? What is the risk
Yeah.
over there?
Yeah, there are gases. Basically, when they go in, there could be different types of gases. I said there are basically three types of gases: asphyxiants, simple asphyxiant, chemical asphyxiants, and irritant. In their case, the gases which are there are not irritants because they would know that there's a problem. In their case, they don't know there's a problem because it could be a simple asphyxiant or a chemical asphyxiant. For example, because of the rotting of the matter, there could be some toxic gases formed, but usually what happens, there is a lack of oxygen. So it's a simple asphyxiant.
So
But
what is the solution? I mean, if our children had to go back home and said, we had Dr. Ganguly who spoke to us, and if you're working in that, or maybe a neighbor who's working, as a Parikrmika, what advice could our children give them and say, if you're going down a manhole, this is what you can do?
good. Yeah, very good question. Excellent. So, in a big organization, what happens is that they measure the level of oxygen before people enter. Now, in the confined space, because where these people are going in, sanitary workers are going in, is basically a confined space. So that's what happens in a big organization. We are not talking about big organizations here. In this case, what happens? The best way to guard people against it is to have some level of communication. If that the moment person and tell them that this can happen, and the moment you feel giddy, then use some kind of wire to pull something, communicate that you have this problem. It can be as simple as a rope. You tug the rope and somebody at the top knows that you are having a problem. So that is, but what happens is that people have a false sense of confidence, overconfidence, that no, nothing will happen to me. So they must have this awareness. So that is what we need to know. Apart from giving the rope, we need to give them this awareness that this can happen, and this is what you should be guarding against, and this is what you should do about it. So that's what we can do.
They should go down with a rope around their waist, right?
No, waist, they should some rope, but for tugging, so that there should be somebody at the top who will know that there's a problem. But more importantly, they should know what to look out for, when to tug the rope.
Right. And then
It shouldn't be too late. Yeah.
Is it the same, Dr. Ganguly, for people who are digging wells?
Not that
Annually,
much. Not that much. Because there's no situation where the gas is trapped inside. For sanitation workers, the gas gets trapped inside, and there these fatalities happen. Very seldom you will hear a person getting trapped inside while digging a well and dying. But you hear of it very often when people are going into this sanitation work. Who is next?
Yeah, Tasmia is next.
Yeah.
Srushti is also there.
Yeah, there's a queue.
Yeah.
So all of you are
Yeah,
welcome.
there's a queue. Yeah.
Tasmia, please.
Anna, I am Tasmia from 7th grade, Parikrma Jayanagar. Anna, you said that we have these detectors and the detective machine which booms alarm when there is the high speed of that carbon monoxide, Anna. So but before it reaches the human level, there is a little bit of gas also, Anna. That gas, does it affect us or not, Anna?
So that's what I said. So we have this, you can't have any kind of industrial operation which doesn't have a hazard. So even some places there will be a little bit of carbon monoxide. If you are lighting oven, some chula in your house, there will be some carbon monoxide will be coming out, but our body can handle it. It's that level at which our body can't handle, which we need to be careful about, and that is the level, permissible exposure limit they call it. So there is a permissible exposure limit, like 90 decibels for noise was a permissible exposure limit. Like that for all the chemicals and gases and occupational hazard, there is a permissible exposure limit. So that is set into the detector. So the moment it comes near that level, for example, for carbon monoxide, it is 25 parts per million in the air. So the moment it comes to 25 parts per million, then the things will sound. But is 25 parts per million safe? Yes. When we talk about a permissible exposure limit, it means a level at which a person can be exposed day after day, month after month, year after year, without any harm to your health. That's based on today's scientific knowledge. Kalpana, you have another question?
Yeah, I do. Then I remember reading in school, like, I think it was in the mines or something. They usually sent a canary down, right? A bird.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, because the canary is much more sensitive. It's like a detector. If the canary is alive and well, that means there's sufficient oxygen and the gases are not there.
Right.
There's a scientific detector, biological detector.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
Shushti?
Yes, Sushti.
Anna, since you taught so many about occupational, say about the one thing about occupational disease of teachers, Anna.
Yeah, good. And teachers, very good. So what happens to teachers? Basically, two things. One is chalk dust.
Yes, Anna.
Okay, that has come down to a large extent because chalk and blackboards are not used to that extent. But even people who were exposed to a amount of chalk dust, that used to cause breathing problems for them. But the other thing which has not happened, not gone away, is standing for a long time. As the range increases, what happens? Our heart is not able to pump not strong enough to pump the blood in our legs back to the heart and lungs and top. So the blood tends to pool in the legs when they stand for long periods of time. And then there's a problem with the backbone. So back pain, leg pain, and pooling of blood in the legs, these are occupational diseases of teachers. So what do they need to do about it? What they need to do about it is, first of all, to be aware that they should break up their standing as much as possible. There are specific exercises which can help them. Once they know that this thing is about to happen, the warning signs are there, and based on that, they can take those exercises to prevent the blood from pooling or from the back from getting overpained and weight on your knees. So all those things are typical occupational problems of teachers.
So actually right now, I think these hazards are no more an occupation. The moment you step out of your house, you're constantly facing hazard, right? Whether it's the...
Yeah, but occupational hazards you can't avoid because that's part of you're exposed to it for 8 hours a day. And you're getting paid for it, you're expected to be exposed to that.
Okay, Soumya is not there. Yeah, Soumya.
Yes, Anna. Anna, you said that. Anna, I'm there.
Huh?
Yeah.
Anna, you said physical hazards mean which we can see and feel, Anna, like vibration, cold, and all we can feel. And because of that, we get some pains, Anna. We can cure that by asking like the medicines, Anna.
No, that is the whole point. Occupational diseases means no cure. That is the problem. That is why you need to know about what can happen. If you get, for example, let's take noise. You can feel noise. Once you get into a factory and you can hear it is noisy, you can feel it. But the problem what happens is that once you get exposed to noise, more and more noise, after a few years, what happens? Your ears start getting affected. But you don't know about it. Because what happens is that the portion which gets affected, we are not using that for speaking. So we don't know about it. Only if you do a particular type of test called audiometry, then only you can detect it. Otherwise what happens? Then it starts spreading into the frequencies which we use for talking and hearing. Then what happens? Somebody is talking, you can't hear. You ask them to talk louder. As everybody is watching TV, you have to turn up the volume to hear it. But by that time, the ear is gone. No medicine can bring that hearing back. Same thing for the eyes. Supposing you are exposed to I said infrared from the furnace, then the cataract will develop in your eyes. Then you have to get an operation done. No medicine will get rid of cataract. That's why occupational diseases are so dangerous, because they take long time to develop, and by the time you have detected it, realize the problem, gone. No cure, only prevention.
Anna, if we are
Correct.
working in the noisy place, Nana, for
Yes.
2 days we'll get the pain. We'll go ask some medicines, Nana, we'll be applying it. Then it will be reducing, Nana.
Yeah, for 2 days it's okay, but for 2 years it's a problem. No medicine will cure after. What will happen after 2 years?
Feel that, Nana, if we be taking regularly, Nana, it will be cured or
So if
still.
you for 2 hours, 2 days, if it happens, your medicine will cure it. But for 2 years, once your hearing goes, nothing can bring your hearing back.
And 2 days you've taken medicine, but third day you have to go back to work and the whole
Yes,
cycle.
that is the problem. That's why you said hazard. That's the hazard which you can't avoid.
Right.
So we need to know so what do you need to do? You have to have protection. So there's controls. So once you know that it's beyond the level, first of all, it's the job of the management to bring it within the permissible limit. But sometimes it's simply not possible. Then we have to use earmuffs and earplugs. Earmuffs and earplugs we have to wear so that our hearing is not affected. Though it's more than 90 decibel, but still we are protected by wearing earplugs and earmuffs.
Children, we have time for just one last question, okay? Then because we'll have another session, and we're taking it for granted, but it's also a sincere request that Dr. Ganguly will come back and speak to us once more.
Certainly. Yeah, one more question.
So, yeah, one more question. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yes, Akka. As Anna said, biological hazards now come. In this,
Yes.
Anna said the level 4, which can kill and do not have medicines, Anna.
Yes.
They do not have medicines, Anna, but using simple precautions, can those be cured, Anna?
Yeah, that is the whole point. You have to take precautions. Occupational diseases, you can't do, there is no cure. So level 4 biological hazards is a very good example of occupational hazard, because there is nothing no medicine can cure it. So you have to take precaution. So for level 4, you have this what is called level 4 biohazard precautions. So the standard list is there. Anybody who is working with all those things, for example, now you know, the very common example is coronavirus. So any doctor who's treating coronavirus cases, what are the PPE he has to wear, what are the common things which you have, precautions which you have to take, social distancing, wearing the mask, washing your hands. These are the things which you have to do, precautions which you have to take to prevent a level 4 biohazard.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you for
Yeah.
Okay. So
Thank you.
as we discussed, okay, Soumya, one more chance, make it quick. Soumya, okay. No, I think we'll keep the rest of the questions. If there are any questions, because see, I will be taking a quiz on your subject tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I'll get to know whether there are some more doubts and things. Then I'll pass it on to you.
Sure.
Right,
And we
yeah.
can start the ergonomics lecture with 5 minutes on pending questions.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, students,
Thank you.
let me
Thank
tell
you,
all
Bhaskar. Just one moment, Bhaskar Anna. Let me thank you for giving me this opportunity to interact with everybody. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna.
Anindya, pleasure is mine, because today, after 45 years, we are in the same classroom. We were together in the same classroom.
You
decades
both are
ago.
back in school. You're back in school.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, because
Yeah.
students, there's Anindya Anindya Anna is my classmate in college. Okay, right. Thank you very much, Anindya. Thank you very much.
Okay. My
So
pleasure.
we look
Okay,
forward to meeting again in the same
Yeah.
screen, same
Yeah.
platform.
Take care. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you so much again on
Okay.
behalf of all the teachers as well as the students. And
And
thank you, Bhaskar.
send me the recording, because
yeah.
yeah.
You can share it. Yes.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
thank you so much, Bhaskar, for these enriching
No, not at all.
experiences week
My
after
pleasure,
week.
yeah.
Thank you so much. God bless
For me,
you.
it's a reunion. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Ganguly. Look forward to
Okay.
meeting you again. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Yeah.
Can we log out, Akka?
Yeah. First, everyone, we can take a picture, na?
Okay, Akka.
Yeah.